Hello and welcome to another edition of Community Tapestry. My name is Napoleon Bell and I am the Executive Director with the City of Columbus Community Relations Commission. I'd like to welcome you to the program. And my co-host to the next to me is...
Who am I?
Miss Tony Bell. I'm so glad that you're here again.
Thank you. Thanks, it's good to be here.
So that we can have a fun-filled and energetic and engaging conversation with our guests here today. And I tell you though, you know, it's a great day today, and I think going forward because we have a new mayor-elect happening. So congratulations to Andrew Ginther on winning as for mayor, starting there in the beginning of January of 2016.
Wow, so I'm getting old.
Yeah, well, you said that, I didn't say that. But it's great to hear of that. But we've got a great conversation also for this next hour put together, so we're real happy to bring that up and really engage our guests here, but then also give the opportunity for our guests who are on TV or on the other side of the TV watching. So it's going to be great conversation.
We've got a treat in store for you.
We do, and we're going to be talking about diversity in education and the different perspectives of that and those that impact our young people and those here in the city of Columbus. So. Well, why don't we just go ahead and get started and introduce our guests.
We've got two special guests on this segment, so.
Well, to our left, we have Miss Kim Braswell. She's a special assistant to the president for diversity initiatives at Columbus State Community College. Welcome to the program.
Glad to be here.
And then to my right, some person that I have known for quite a long time here, Miss Kay Bell Mason. She's the head of the lower school at the Columbus Academy. I'd like to welcome you to the program.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, good. Well, this is going to be a great conversation, and just relax, and we're going to have a good time here because this is something that I think is on the minds of so many people in regards to education and our young people and what impacts them and making sure that they have equal opportunity and access to a really good education. So let me first start with you, Ms. Kim. You started a program at Columbus State, which actually drills down into the conversations of race and ethnicity, and called Courageous Conversations. Tell us a little bit about that and what that's all about, first of all.
Well, I don't want to take full credit for it. When I got back to Columbus State, President Harrison, when we met, one of my first deliverables that he asked about was, we need to have some community dialogues, and that was inspired by some of his conversations with some students on campus. And so he wondered, how can we do this? And that's where my work began there. So what we decided to do was use the Kirwan Institute's 2015 report on implicit bias as a framework to be able to have those conversations. Talking about race is so large, so we had to figure out how do you break this into pieces. And so we used those segments inside of there to look at systems inside of race. And we stretched that across community forums. So we're doing 5 community forums, 2 have already been complete. We have 3 more to go, and then we'll culminate with a Think Summit where we'll invite everyone from Central Ohio back to kind of look at the whole year. What do we talk about through the entire year? And the segments are, we started with myth busting, because you have to start there. And then we went to criminal justice. Our next one coming up this month in November is health and healthcare. And then we're going to do employment, finish up with education, and then will be the Think Summit.
Also, you know, you've already had two of the conversations. What stands out to you? What is that piece, that nugget that you drew from there that really says, you know, that aha moment?
I think one of the most amazing things is there is curiosity, speculation when you say we're going to have a community dialogue on race. People wonder, how honest is it really going to be? People are approaching that topic from completely different vantage points. For some people, it really is an agenda item. You know, they can walk away from it and it doesn't feel personal to them. And then other people are the agenda. You're kind of wearing the meeting, you're wearing the topic all the time. And so I think for those who are in a constant position to explain their perspective, if they're non-white, then they're going in very hesitant. How much am I going to reveal about my story, my experiences? This is already painful. Do I want to keep retelling stories that are painful? And I think for a lot of our attendees who are white, they wonder, how do I exist in this space? You know, how do I make sure that I'm being sensitive, that I'm listening? Is this my turn to just listen? Do I speak? So I think watching people try to navigate that space without too much direction, letting them figure out for themselves how they have an honest dialogue, and then giving them some tools, some framework to be able to start that conversation and to figure out how powerful a conversation can be if you approach it honestly. It's interesting to see that, to see that kind of break apart right now.
So there's usually something that goes beyond a conversation, because people can talk and talk all day. But what comes of those conversations?
So I think some of it is part of how honest people are. One of the things that I'm noticing is there are so many different perspectives in how to approach social justice. And for some people, I think, for example, about my mother who is in her late 60s, for her, it is revolutionary to talk about her experiences because she grew up during a time where you don't talk about it. You go in, you have this experience, it's inside of your body, you're living inside of overt experiences as well as microaggressive behaviors all the time. You don't talk about it. You go and you get the work done. So for her to be in her late 60s and sit at a table with white people and say, this is what white people did to me, absolutely revolutionary for her. But then for younger people, they're experiencing the world differently. The whole world can be accessed on Facebook, so they don't see things as obviously as those who are older, probably Gen X or older, do. So their whole world, their whole experience in racism is microaggressive. But if you don't notice it, you think everything's okay.
So how are the students benefiting from having those conversations, the something that comes of it, the way that it lives with them and empowers them throughout the remainder of their education with Columbus State, as community members and as part of the global community? How do you anticipate that might translate?
I think one of the most powerful things is the permission to name. To have these experiences, you don't know if it was just you or something going on,
right.
Which things
so
are
is
me
it
or
me? Is
right,
it me?
Exactly. Or is this something that's systemic? So I think one of the most powerful things that happened for some of the younger people is realizing that wasn't you, that was a system. And as you talk to people, you're going to hear this same story over and over and over again. That's a system. That doesn't have anything to do with you. So it's very powerful to be able to name something. That's what that is. Then the action comes in afterwards when we get all these stories, because it would be disingenuous of us to then, and especially since we're the conveners, you know, we don't own this conversation. The people who are in the room, they own the conversation. But we want to know what our part is as being one of the most diverse institutions in Central Ohio, as a college. So we want to follow the lead of the stories that are told, the voices that we hear, and to see what comes next after this. What is the next right thing to do? And a lot of that is having young people be able to have the power to name what's happening so that they can figure out what they would want to do once they name it.
Right, and it sounds like you are having, there's intergenerational conversation that's happening, so young people can talk about their experiences, and they can also learn from the wisdom of, this is how we were able to maneuver through this and be empowered.
Yes, it's beautiful. And I mean, it's watching Sankofa, you know. And
yeah, watching the bird go forward and look back.
Yes, and I don't even know if they all realize it's happening. And so as we move forward, then I'm finding people who are coming to me and saying, can I bring my child who's in high school or my child who's in middle school? And we say, yes, the conversation is framed for those ages to be able to handle and tell their stories. They're imperative, you know, for the work, but it's amazing. The other thing that's heartbreaking is to have someone who's in their 70s or 80s have the exact same story and experience as someone who's 20. That's painful to see that, and that's where we know.
And you could hear that pain. In the second one that you did, and I was able to attend, was you could hear that pain. And also that one thing that came out was they were looking for what was the male whites, when were they going to speak?
Yes.
Or because they weren't speaking up. And I think you spoke to that, being that they weren't sure whether to hear to listen or to speak, or what that would be, or what that would look like. Very interesting conversation. So let me change gears here a little bit, because that kind of segues into diversity and growing up. And so I turned to Miss Kay Bell Mason. Miss Kay, you know, you grew up, but going to Columbus School for Girls, and I guess that you were there from one of the first lifers. So that meaning 1st through 12th grade, that you were at Columbus School for Girls and graduated from there, and you were one of two that did that, the first ones, and being African American that were able to do that. What was that like? I mean, did you realize that when going to school there? And so if you're one of two that went through their life, and I'm sure the population of African American persons at Columbus School for Girls was very minimal during that time.
Right there, we did not have any adults that were teachers or faculty, or we had staff that were African American while I was there. But there was a very small population of African American girls, and one of the things that sticks out, you ask any one of the graduates what their experiences were, completely different stories. I had a great experience for the most part, and I also knew that inevitably I was there from first grade through 12th grade, and then the other person that was there, often we were confused regularly. I was called Trudy, she was called Kay. It was, I mean, and by the head of school, he did it all the time. Even as we were, it was like, I hope you say the right name when I walk up to shake your hand. And we don't look that much alike, but it happened.
Talking about Trudy Preston at the time.
Trudy Preston Bartley now. And that was something that stands out for me. Now, the other thing that stands out is being the only, and interestingly, as our class became a little more diverse, where we had a total of 3 African American girls in our grade, we were never in the same section. Never. I don't know why, but we were never in the, I do know why, but it was just kind of interesting that we were never in the same sections. So even though we really had a lot of time together outside of school, we didn't have that kind of time inside of school. So that was definitely part of the plan to keep us separated. The other time where it really felt uncomfortable was whenever we were talking about anything in history that had to do with slavery. I mean, inevitably, we got to turn around and ask our opinion as to what happened. And I'd look at him and say, I don't know, I have had the same education that you've had. So I don't have any great insights about this, not to mention.
Too young to know at that time.
Right. So those are the things that being the only or the first felt like. But from my experience at CSG, it was really very empowering, as I felt very confident about what I was learning and what I was able to take with me when I went to college, which was important because that was a completely different experience.
Did you have any inkling on how to help your parents advocate for you? Meaning, when you're that young, you really don't have language for it to say, I think I might be alone, or I don't know if I'm having shared experiences, but did your parents have a recognition of what to do?
I think I didn't talk about that necessarily as much, because I recognized that, when my father went to school, he was one of 3 on an entire college campus. So I felt like I didn't want, how could I say to him, I'm feeling like I'm being picked on or whatever, when he had to endure a lot more and survived and was successful. And so I felt like, okay, well, this is not horrible. And quite honestly, as I look back, I remember, some of the older girls, African American girls, that wanted to start a black girls club, and that was squashed. And it was interesting. I mean, I had this lovely little experience with my friends, and so I wasn't quite nearly involved, but if you talk to other members of my class, they definitely had different experiences.
Now, and you're talking, this is back in the 70s. So
60s and 70s.
Oh, 60s and 70s. A long time ago. Yes, probably before I was born.
Yes, no, not before you were born. I'm gonna keep you honest.
Right. But so you started off at CSG, and lo and behold, you end up at Columbus Academy. And this was an all-boys school up until 1990, I believe, or so. But you've been with Columbus Academy for 25 years. Starting off as a 1st grade and 3rd grade teacher, then a 5th and 6th grade teacher, and now you're a first again. Well, no, by just being there as a teacher, you're a first, because you were the first female African American teacher, and now you're the first African American head of lower school. So you've gone full gamut from Columbus School for Girls to Columbus Academy, and the diversity in both of those schools has apparently changed dramatically from back in the 70s, what have you. What does that feel like? I mean,
do you feel special being the first?
You know, I'm just kind of living life. So I don't see myself necessarily, until I think about it or somebody brings it up, that I was the first. But I think watching the change is exciting, and it's also, hearing the stories are so similar. I mean, I hear things, children in the high school talking about experiences that they're having in school that I had at CSG in the 60s and 70s. And I think, really, we're still having the same conversation. They're still turning around and the teacher's still asking, or, you know, allowing the question to be asked about, you know, well, what does it feel like, or what did so I that's discouraging on the one hand, but on the other hand, our numbers are growing, and so that there are students that are seeing faculty that look like them. In the lower school, it's getting to be a much more diverse group of faculty. The students, I feel like, you know, the African American students, they give me a certain smile, or I can give them a certain look that they understand. You know, which they see their mother or their grandmother, or their, you know, in the look that I'm giving them to, you know, behave in a certain way. But ultimately, the students, I feel like they are starting to see themselves more. We are having the adult population, the faculty is starting to have more conversations. There's still that discomfort with the non-African or non-folks of color that are there, in terms of, how do I do this? I don't know how to say it. I don't want to offend anybody. So they're hesitant, but I would say they are absolutely willing to have the conversation. So
that's pretty important. And this is a question for both of you, how have you found your experiences being able to help you be better advocates and advocates and communicators with parents, teachers, families, and the community on how to make this, I mean, Columbus is going to continue to grow in its diversity.
I had different experiences being a brown administrator. I think it depends on if the school has hit, or the district or whatever it is, has hit a tipping point with the critical mass. And for... You
mean from their willingness and ability, or some other combination therein?
So I think, so I'll give an example. In my experience as an administrator of color, I had students who did not, black students, who did not want to talk with me, not want to be in affiliation with me because I represented something, you know, in being older, very comfortable in my blackness, even having dreadlocks, or saying, hey, we should, you know, do these things that are indicative of blackness. There was almost a discomfort. It's like, you know,
I'm trying to disassociate.
Yeah,
from
they
that.
don't know I'm here. So, you know, this is going to bring more attention to me. And I think part of that is when the numbers are still really low. That's harder. That's really hard. Or when
this was in another school system.
Different school system, different school system. And I think K-12 is very different than
college.
Yeah, it's very different too. And I've worked in I've worked at a private liberal arts college before. Different experience there too, where I was an administrator. And I would meet students, particularly some students who had never really been around other black people before. And it took them a while. You're kind of watching their racial identity development unfold, and them trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do with you?
So it sounds like an important thing to remember is that there's not any one prescription on what the best way to address and integrate and offer conversations, but it sounds like an important first step is to be willing to have that conversation.
And that it can be counterproductive if you just try to take a brown, you know, person and throw some brown kids in there, to just assume that they'd get along because they're all brown.
Right, or assume that they all have the same history.
And that's, I think, my experience, because it's been primary in the elementary, and because that age, it's all about fairness. And so when you are able to, I mean, when I was a classroom teacher, I would have these kinds of, I'd throw something out there in a morning meeting or something, and they are the conversation, they're so willing, all of them, to engage in the conversation because it's really looking at what's fair and what's not fair, and they're not afraid to say something or ask the question that's taboo. And granted, I'm facilitating this discussion. I couldn't say this would be true in every classroom, but I think it's a growing number of classrooms where that comfort is beginning to grow. The students would just ask me anything, or ask a lot of things, and I was able to kind of normalize the conversation, which I had these great ideas that this would transfer all the way through their, education, and I can honestly attest that because it is a pre-K through 12 school, that I would hear some things that some of my students would say, and I think, wow, you completely forgot about the conversation we had. But that's 1 year out of their experience. So I hope, hopefully as more faculty get comfortable with having those conversations that are authentic, that can happen in the classroom, regardless of what the content is, then it'll normalize the conversation so it's not such a scary topic.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, and this kind of piggybacks on it. How do we impact the other teachers, and how they impact our young people? Because it sounds like you're definitely in a proper place as the head of the lower school, and there's a reason for that. And so how do you impact those teachers to continue to have that passion and also knowledge of how to have that conversation, in the schools or in college? How do we do that?
Again, I think I have from the lower school and even some middle school experience, every teacher believes that the focus should be on the child. And so their whole purpose is to support that child in any way. So we've had lots of conversations about thinking about what all children bring to school at the beginning of the day, and the things that they've had to deal with. And so that's created opportunities for us to have a lot of dialogue around that, and being able to have that perspective and have that lens on, which allows for us, when we have the time, to dig deeper. Now, time is a big commodity that, we would need. You can't do it in a half an hour. And it has to happen.
You can't do it on one professional development day. And
so it has to be an intentional, sustained conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I think you touch on something that I think is critical for that, and that is we like to say as educators that we separate our personal life and our professional lives,
but you are
but we
who
don't.
You are wherever you are.
Yeah, you're bringing all of
Your
that
whole
into the classroom or into the work environment all the time, and that means then anything that I have experienced based on race, I'm walking into any relationship, any interaction with all of my experiences. So that means, I think, in training and professional development, a critical part of that is processing my own experiences to make sure that I'm checking myself regarding my own implicit bias, because it's going to show up. So I need to make sure that I'm paying attention to that.
So parents play a very important role in this as well, because children are they're only at school for so many hours a day and so many months out of the year. What message would you like to give to parents, whether their child is obviously diverse or a child of color or some mix therein? What advice would you like to give to parents and families for helping to make that conversation and that transition better?
I think, being in an independent school, the partnership or the collaboration, it's really more a collaboration than a partnership, that we have with our parents, the faculty and the parents, is that's at the forefront. So,
that's almost it's an expectation.
The culture of the school is that you're going to have that collaboration. And through that collaboration, dialoguing with the classroom teacher or with the different administrators about the challenges is welcome from the wide range and the continuum wherever they are. And we're standing on the mission statement of the school, and being able to hear all sides, and then hopefully direct the conversation to the where we want it to go, and being very clear about it, about who we are, is really important. And so that's that conversation and providing opportunities, which is a challenge, because we're all working all day long, and then to ask people to come in at the end of a day or at the beginning of a day is a challenge. But whether it's through our communications, written or verbally, that it's a consistent message that we really value what you have to say, where you're coming from, and we also want the conversation to be authentic.
And it sounds like you really want the conversation to happen.
Yeah.
Well, Kim, and tell us about, I mean, because Kate talked on or touched on the collaboration with parents. And I know you came from a previous school system where I don't know whether that happened or whether you even had the support of even the administration to get these conversations and collaborations to happen.
Right. You know, I think based on my experience, I think it's critical for parents to be seen and be vocal on a consistent basis. I think sometimes, particularly in predominantly white schools, particularly if there is also the money power element to it, sometimes that parent voice, particularly for parents of color, parents of students of color, whether it's transracial adoption as well, but parents of students of color don't always say something every single time. So then what can happen is if you wait until it gets bigger, this looks like the first one, when really you're reacting to 8 or 5 or 10 things, you know? So then the system, whatever system it is managing this like it's the first time. And it looks way out of control. Say something early, often, all the time, so that it doesn't look like a contentious relationship, to own the power that you have. Parents are incredibly powerful, but they have to be seen. They have to be vocal so that there doesn't develop a kind of relationship where you're invisible and then suddenly visible and very loud and very angry.
Do you have some tips on how to be seen and visible without being seen as, you know, there could be
the angry black woman that's coming in and it's all blown up.
Hey, don't talk about me.
I think that there are times. I think there's and I'm including myself. My children go to a suburban school district, and I'm guilty of this as well. That I don't have to wait to show up when something goes wrong. You know, I can show up when there are good things, just so they know when that. And we are there for when the reception happens. I'm there. When there's a choir, I'm there. Right. When there's a little fair, I'm there. Right. So that when I come and show up when something's wrong,
not a stranger.
You've already talked with me before. You already know that I'm not about to go crazy.
Is about more than parent-teacher conference.
Exactly. And you know that I'm not intimidated by this building. I'm not threatened by your power. I see you as a peer, and I understand that we are both here in the interest of developing this child. And so it should be that also the student voice is valued in that conversation, not that we're talking about you and we're developing a solution for you and you're not even part of the conversation. That we're all in this and that we're talking consistently, often. You know what I look like, so when you see me in the hallway, you should speak to me. That is there the whole time. And I think sometimes when the numbers are so low, I think sometimes we're hesitant to, you know, well, I don't want to mess this up.
Yeah, who wants to mess up a bad thing?
Exactly.
And it sounds like we're all in the same boat, that we are all trying to get this right. So it's why you being here in this season of Thanksgiving and harvest is so important, because you've harvested a lot of goodness and you continue to sow it in. So your advice is so important.
Most definitely. Well, let me. I'm not sure how much time we have left, but let me ask you this, and I'll switch back to Kay, because something that you're also doing that is, I guess, part of education in a sense, but education of your own mind and others, and you see the importance of genealogy and where you've come from, because so often, you know, we have to. The saying is, you know, you don't understand where you're going till you know where you've been, and so why did you start that, as far as really looking into the genealogy of the family, and is there something interesting or a fact that you found out?
Right. Did you find out that you're really royalty?
Right.
I haven't found that out yet. Right. Confirm that. Initially, I think the first time I had any thoughts about it was when I was a first grade teacher, and we had a Thanksgiving unit, and the unit was, you know, can you trace back your genealogy to where, you know, and it was amazing to me how many of these first graders that were in this, you know, small community that could trace back to the Mayflower. And I thought, wow, first of all, that they could do it. And they would bring their documentation or their parents. And I thought, wow, that is fascinating that one little ship has at least 3 representatives, descendants of those. So I thought, wow, that's interesting. And then my father's side of the family, one of our cousins did a book that had that side, my grandmother's side of the family. And basically, it was fascinating to me just to read it and hear the story and how we got this land down in Georgia and how it's, how it all came about. Then I decided to actually check into my mother's side of the family. And so the nugget that I got from that was that, interestingly, our family was emancipated from the Mendenhall plantation in North Carolina. And they were emancipated, well, actually it was manumitted, but it's basically emancipated in 1855, before the Civil War. And so we were actually on the Underground Railroad, and we were brought to Champaign County, and that's where a lot of the family stayed for at least 50 to 70 years. And so finding the names of Levi Coffin associated, who was known as kind of the father of the Underground Railroad, from North Carolina, who was neighbors to George Mendenhall, who emancipated the 28 slaves that made it to Ohio, and one of those 28, he actually emancipated a number, but the last big group, 28 slaves, my great-great-great-great-grandmother was with that group. And so seeing that, going, wow, this is incredible. Mm-hmm. Now my question is to find that royalty piece in the 1700s.
And this started out of a classroom project,
right? Yeah.
And just seeing that the young people were able to trace their heritage back,
right,
was amazing.
And you being able to trace your own heritage back, or going on that journey, has probably done something for you. Like, does it confirm something about your being?
The strength of the story of slaves to after slavery and all that has, occurred in that journey, the family journey, just gives me, a lot of strength.
Yeah, you recognize you're made of the good stuff.
Right.
And is that something that you look to inspire in your students as you think about, there's all this diversity, and even with so many immigrants coming in, mm-hmm, and being educated, right, they've got stories, right, that...
It's important to hear those stories too.
Yeah.
And to share them.
Well, let me switch gear, or at least go to Kim, because you recently went on a civil rights tour, mm-hmm, and you had when we're talking about slavery and what have you, but there was something that really touched you, I know, as far as that you talked about being on a civil rights tour and your family. Tell us a little bit about that.
So my mother integrated a school here in Columbus, and I should say too, definitely part of my story is that I'm biracial. My father's white and my mother's black, and our family, our nuclear family, there haven't been any issues, although outside of that, of course, plenty. But when I went on that first Civil Rights Heritage Tour for me, I had to leave earlier. So I stayed in Birmingham while the trip went on. And it was this Friday afternoon, everything's really still. And it was just like me sitting on the curb by Kelly Ingram Park across from the 16th Street Baptist Church. And I called my mom because I knew she wouldn't believe that where I was. And I'm checking in with her, and I said, "You'll never guess where I am. I'm sitting on the curb at Kelly Ingram Park." And she went silent on the phone. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she just started crying. And she said, "I never would have thought that all those years when I watched these things on the news and my mother would say, 'Who died today?' That I would have this biracial child and you'd be sitting here able to see these things that I've never been able to see." And in us talking, she said that she was forced to be silent as a student, sitting on those playgrounds, and the kids wouldn't play with her, and still very emotional, absolute PTSD from her experiences. So she said it's just so fulfilling for her that she was silenced, but I had this voice, being biracial, and then having this voice and having this opportunity to sit in this place where years ago this wouldn't even be possible. So moving. Mm-hmm.
Diversity in education, making a difference.
Right. Two trailblazers. Thank you so much for all that you do and continue to do.
Wow. Proud of both of you.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not as much of Kay, but no, I'm just kidding. It's my sister.
So, yeah, for the viewing audience, they're brother and sister.
So, no, seriously, proud of both of you, and continue doing the work that you're doing, really making a difference in the lives of so many young people that grow up to be our older
leaders,
people, our bigger
right?
people.
They
right.
are our future now.
Right. Yeah.
They've got next.
They have next. Mm-hmm. we have today. So
Right.
we got to make sure we use today to the fullest.
That's right. And speaking of who's got next, we have our next guests are some pretty amazing people. So you've had a chance to hear from some educators. You get a chance to hear from a mother and daughter who have gone on an amazing journey. They are members of the Columbus City School District, and they are perpetuating diversity and being part of the global community and the fabric of society in a really special way. We know you'll be inspired, so we'll see you soon.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hello and welcome back to the second segment of Community Tapestry. And if you're just joining us, my name is Napoleon Bell and I'm the Executive Director with the City of Columbus Community Relations Commission. And to my left,
I'm Tony Bell, the co-host.
all right, well, myself and Miss Tony Bell, we had a great conversation on our first segment, but then now we're going outside of the classroom because education just doesn't end inside the classroom. So we've got two great guests here that have done some education outside of the classroom, a mother-daughter team. And so let me first start with introducing and welcoming to the program Miss Nancy Pion, and she's actually one of our commissioners of the Community Relations Commission. So welcome to the program.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
And then turning to my right, we have her daughter, Abby, who is a student with Columbus City Schools and was the team of this education experience outside the classroom. So welcome to you, Abby.
Thanks.
All right. Well, so glad to have both of you here, and we're excited to hear about your travels and how you did this education outside of the classroom. So first of all, let me start with you, Abby. Being so, you look so old and grown up. Well, first of all, what grade are you in?
Second grade.
Second grade. Well, that's amazing. So you look like you're in about 6th or 7th grade. Is that, no? No, second grade. Okay, okay. Well, I understand you took a special trip with your mom and aunt recently, and where did you go?
Well, we went to South Korea and Dongdaemun and Gyeongju, and I think it was Seoul.
Wow. So you went to all those different locations. Well, and you took a plane. How long did it take to get there?
13 hours.
13 hours.
Well, Nancy, why did you decide to take Abby to Korea?
Well, I had an international business trip, and as I was researching more about the location, I found that they were UNESCO World Heritage recognized sites. So I said, what a great way to have her exposed to these historical sites. My father took us when we were younger, and I thought it was a great time for her to kind of explore and learn more about her cultural heritage and the history of Asia and South Korea.
Wow. So what was the experience? No, what was the experience like with you and your daughter? I mean, how did that make you feel in taking her to these incredible sites?
Well, I think there was a tremendous connection as a mother and daughter on this trip, and also for her to understand, the cultural heritage and customs that we practice in the United States are very similar in Korea, as well as for her to also maybe recognize her own differences about her own cultural heritage as well and practices.
That's really amazing. What are some of the other things that you were hoping that Abby would learn on this journey?
There's some differences in like Columbus, where we currently live, and also the modes of transportation, the different types of foods, the customs, and the historical sites were very, very important to her as well, because probably traditionally, she probably wouldn't learn a lot about Asian history until she's in high school or in college. So it was a really great time to educate her about the history of who she is as a person as well.
Well, let me turn to Abby now. You went to Korea. What did you like best about Korea?
Well, when we were in South Korea, I remember when we were jumping on rocks across the stream, so that would be my favorite part.
Across the stream?
Uh-huh.
So was this like out in the wilderness somewhere, or was this, where were you jumping across the stream?
In the shopping district.
Oh, wow, okay.
And your mom talked about transportation Was getting around a little bit different in South Korea than it is here?
No. It's like all the same. I guess so, because there's a lot of things that might be different, but they all look the same.
So, but was there something on the subway, was there something on the subway that might be different there than if you were on the subway here?
Well, I haven't been on the subway here, but I have in Korea, so I don't really know yet because I haven't gone the subway here yet.
Well,
Was there something about soap? Can you tell us about the soap?
Okay, so my mom said that people had these balls of soap that, millions of people touched them. So my mom was afraid that she would have to touch those. But in the subway, we saw one.
You saw it? Okay, and do you think that, like, when you get on the school buses, there's soap hanging for you to wash your hand?
No, we don't have like soap in our buses here.
Do
you want them to? No.
So it sounds like there was a lot of people there. Did it seem like there was a lot more people there than here, or about the same?
About the same.
Okay.
That's amazing. So tell us 2 ways that you thought Korea was similar, that you thought Korea was going to be different from the United States, but you realized it's kind of the same.
Well, let's see. I think it would be, we sit at a table in America, but in Korea we sit on the ground, but we sit at tables, so in America, but I think it's going to be the same because sometimes we sit in these like chairs that in Korea that are just on the ground, but we sit in chairs here, but it's kind of the same too.
Well, I got to ask about this because there's something about me and food. So, tell me about the food. Was the food the same here? I mean, did they have McDonald's and all that kind of stuff there? Or did you try some new foods there that you had never tried before?
I tried some different foods, but they did have a Burger King there in the big shopping mall.
Did you eat at the Burger King there?
No, but there was a Burger King there.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the neatest food that you liked or didn't like?
The spaghetti there, it was like so spicy.
Oh, that's interesting. You've got some pictures as well that you wanted to talk. So will you tell us about the pictures that you have that you sent us?
Mm-hmm. So I want to start with my grandma's family. And we got to see them in this big clothes store. I think they own it, but I don't think so because they do work there, but I thought they owned it. And that was close to the stream that we jumped on rocks.
Oh, okay. So they work in a very special place.
Uh-huh.
What else?
This is when we went to I think it's the temple, but I don't think it is because it looks different than it looked like in real life.
It's bigger and better in real life?
Yeah.
The picture didn't quite do it justice?
Uh-huh.
Nancy, do you want to tell us about some of the pictures as well?
Sure. Some of the different foods, Napoleon, that you mentioned, there's like persimmon smoothies and these rice cakes that are very common, that are made from rice, and they're sweet, kind of doughy. Also, she had a chance to visit the temple and grotto in Gyeongju, and then also had a chance to ring the bell for peace as well, which we don't have a picture of currently. But I think exposing her to some of the culture that we talk about versus seeing it in person is a a huge difference in perception as well for children.
So she actually ended up with a living classroom kind of scenario.
Yes. And we even bought a selfie stick that was there that she had a chance to take her own pictures and kind of see, Korea in her own lens as well.
So Abby, when you came back, did you do a presentation for your class?
Yeah.
Will you tell us about your presentation?
Sure. So let me see. We brought some things from Korea. Well, actually, we bought things, and we brought this little rock that means about. The rock is called Habuba. I think it's Habuba, but it means that a long time ago in Korea, grandpas were called Habura, but then now they're called Haburuji. So it means the first one was great, but the next one is better. And I have a picture of that on here, right here. So when we went out of the airport when we were going to Jeju Island, that person was right there. That rock was right there, but huge.
Wow, that's amazing. And your classmates were pretty excited to hear about your adventure?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Nancy, you were also talking about how you think this international travel opportunity might help Abby in her education and her life. Would you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. Actually, going to Columbus Public Schools, I was reflecting back on the exchange programs in high school and wish I would have taken advantage of that. And also to have her overcome the fear of traveling internationally and wanting to explore early. And as a parent, we talk about traveling internationally and the fear of letting our children go there and explore on their own. But I think that is something, the hesitance, we have to get over that because the world is becoming more global. There's people that are immigrating here to Columbus, as well as people are traveling back to their home countries. So it's important to be aware of your global surroundings. I was pretty amazed. Columbus Public Schools has a huge diversity. And how many global countries are in your classroom?
I think it would be about 15.
15?
Wow.
So she identified 15 global countries right in her classroom, right in Columbus, which is a huge opportunity to learn about diversity as well here in Columbus.
So we hear so much about Columbus City Schools, and I think that the general public just doesn't really know what a gem and what magic there really is.
Yes.
In each of those school buildings. Somehow there's got to be some bad PR, and here we are with the great PR that happens. And you are a product of Columbus City Schools.
Yes. I've lived in Columbus over 40 years and proud resident and very happy to support the city of Columbus as well as the school system, which is very important to us.
Right, so you talk about it and you live it. That's really wonderful. So what message would you like to give to other parents who might be considering thinking about how to help their children integrate as part of the global community and also be partners with education to make sure that they have the best opportunities to grow up well?
The advice that I would give parents is allow your children to explore. We've been able to participate in some wonderful events, especially with the CRC, such as the MLK breakfast to the march, and giving them the opportunity to learn about the different cultures, identities of the community as well. And it's important to give your children the exposure here in Columbus, which we have so many number of vast international and community events that really support that exploration as well.
Let me ask you this, and I think stepping back just to when both of you were in Korea, how did you deal with the language barrier? Abby, how did you deal with the language?
Do you speak do you speak fluent Korean?
Yeah. Actually, my grandma taught me a lot. So, I went to Korea when I was a baby. So my grandma kept speaking Korean, and I started to learn it. And my mom didn't learn. Well, my mom doesn't know that much, so I have to talk in Korean for her sometimes.
Oh, wow.
So you served as the translator? That's awesome.
I mean, but that happens though all too often now.
Right, and locally, because a lot of students have to become translators for their parents as they're new Americans.
And you know what's amazing is I think she knows how to convert to different languages, whether it's Japanese or Chinese. If she meets people from different countries, and that transition just is amazing to see in her, and that she recognizes the differences as well.
That's great. So if we go to South Korea, would you be our guide and our translator?
That's amazing because how young people are able to pick that up and be able to, I'm just
Whereas we
doing
might
good just
struggle.
with English.
Right.
Did
Did you decide that you wanted to learn Korean or become more fluent because Abby was doing so well?
Actually I was kind of forced to learn more about the Korean culture and my language when I started helping the community as a business owner, because I found that even though I was selling insurance, they had more needs than just the insurance services. So whether it's getting a driver's license to finding out where the community health center is, that forced me to learn the language more quickly. And we're very proud that my mother was able to help her learn Korean and continue the tradition of the language and culture.
That's
definitely important.
And that's so wonderful. So Abby's bicultural here.
Yes.
Very, very nice.
So what do you have, this was a huge excursion to really understanding the culture and background and history. What do you see doing next? I mean, with education outside of the classroom, for Abby and for yourself. I mean, with this team.
Ultimately, what I would like to do is expose her more to other cultures and maybe potentially other countries. There's some research that the limited number of vacation time that we have, through the United States employers and the summer breaks kind of limits that. But what I think she has identified for herself is she does enjoy learning about other cultures, having international friends, and also being biracial as well. She's able to learn more about herself, and we look forward to doing the civil rights tour as well down the road.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it does so much to help her be with. Abby, you know some things in Korean. Would you like to tell our viewing audience some things in Korean? I know you can do the alphabet. Is there something else that you want to do as well?
I would want to do the Korean. I would like to say, like, Korean hello.
Okay.
안녕하세요.
Say that again.
안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
And for short, some people say 안녕.
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 All right.
안녕하세요. Wait a minute, I messed that up. 안녕하세요 or 안녕. 안녕. Okay, I've got.
Did we do well?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and in your old age, what do you want to do when you grow up?
I would want to be a singer.
A singer.
Whoa.
Uh-oh, we've got our next show.
All right. Very good. Columbus
time
has
you're on
got
the show,
talent.
We're going to be on the Columbus
That's
Voice.
right.
All right, I
Well-
would ask you to belt out a couple of tunes, but we'll hold off.
Right.
I don't want to catch
We
you
don't
off
want to
guard.
impress the viewing audience too much. We can't give you too much at any one time.
Right.
Wow. Well, Abby, thank you so much. Nancy, thank you. Thank you for being you with us. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're hopeful that our viewing audience will have the opportunity to do the same, to take their young people. It doesn't even have to be out of the country, but out of the state.
Yeah.
Go to places where you learn something
Right.
from
And
being
Ohio
outside of
Ohio has a lot to offer. From Columbus, you can get anywhere in Ohio within 3 hours. So let's do it.
Yep, definitely. So, wrapping up, once again, thank you so much, Commissioner Payan and Abby, for for being here with that great information about your travels and education abroad. And so speaking of education, we have, as far as the Community Relations Commission, every year we celebrate the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in which we will have the oratorical contest, and we want to make sure that you prepare yourselves for that to be able to attend that, but also get your young people involved in that, in the oratorical contest. That's from grades K, or first grade through 12th grade, to be involved in that. But that is going to be held January 16th, that's Saturday, January 16th of 2016 at the King Lincoln, or at the King Arts Complex. We'll be holding that there from 12 noon to 4 o'clock. And then be sure to join us for the Martin Luther King March and Program. The march begins at the King Arts Complex on January 18th, and we kick off there at 4:45. So we gather we start the march at 4:45, and we march over to the Lincoln Theater, in which you will have the treat of hearing from the Myrlie Evers Williams. You know, she was the former chairperson of the NAACP, but then also she was the wife and widow of civil rights leader Medgar Evers. So you want to hear from her, and we also have some entertainment along with that. So it'll be a great program. We have some VIP seating and reception with Myrlie Evers Williams, a book signing, so some great things. So check out our website, and it's at www.crc.columbus.gov, but also you can go to the Friends of the CRC, which is helping with organizing and putting together all of this. So the Friends of the CRC, that's www.friendsofcrc.com to be a part of that. So put that on your calendar, January 16th, oratorical contest, and January 18th, the Columbus, and actually that whole day, there's the breakfast in the morning. So if you want to go to the breakfast in the morning, that's at 7:30, I believe it is, first thing in the morning. But then also at, be sure to go to the march at the King Arts Complex at 4, gathering at 4, and then the program over at the Lincoln Theater at 6. So I think that takes care of everything. Have a great week and take care.